Ho 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 ho. Ladies, gentlemen, gamers, and fellow Spooky Month enjoyers and enthusiasts. Welcome back. So, despite the calming music, we are still continuing Spooky Month, and I hope I didn't mislead people by making them think that this would be an everyday thing where I'll watch a scary movie every day and review it. But every so often, especially during October, I like to watch my scary movies, and I was invited to watch a scary movie with my friends, and so I did. And it's a little bit more of a recent one, because recently the last thing I've seen was Terrifier, both 1 and 2, which are both out on this channel, my reviews at least. So I ended up watching today the movie Smile. Now, because this is kind of more recent, I believe the original film came out in 2022, because there is a Smile 2, and that I believe just came out right now, actually in 2024. But I basically came into this knowing actually a little bit. Now, usually I'm going into it knowing basically nothing unless it's an of the time thing, and that's kind of where this comes in. I've seen commercials for Smile, and I think I've seen some people talk about it too. I've heard some people talk about it. But the biggest thing is, I remember seeing commercials for it, and the biggest thing I know, and it's mainly because of the title of the movie, it's that they're smiling. And smiling, to a creepy extent. But the biggest thing I also remember is that there's a commercial where a lady walks up to another lady's car window, and then her head basically droops down and it's smiling. Big surprise. So I came into this movie, and in general, I am a pretty big horror fanatic. I'm a horror enthusiast, and I've seen horror for a lot of my life. And I was very scared of it as a kid. As a kid, I was scared of a lot of things, right? The dark, scary movies, getting a job, and I'm still scared of that to this day. But, over time, from subjecting myself to a lot of scary movies, I kind of got immune to them. Where, now I hope to be scared. I hope to be thrilled because, I don't know, maybe I'm sick or something. Probably. But regardless. So I wanted to Smile not knowing too much, but knowing a little bit, right? And this is where I would honestly say I was pretty shocked. Now, the movie isn't great. It's not amazing. It's not the best thing ever. But one thing I'll say is the movie starts off very, very strong. It does not take a long time to get into it and for it to get good, for things to start happening. This is a movie where, again, me just setting up the premise of I've seen horror movies, I've kind of become numb to them. This horror movie made me actually feel, right? It actually made me feel nervous, on edge, and very anxious for a good majority of the film. And that's because it kind of follows somewhat of a little bit of a pattern. The pattern is okay, we set things up in the very beginning, stuff happens, there's a cooldown period, stuff happens, there's a cooldown period. But the best part of this is, except more towards the end where this doesn't really apply, and same thing for the beginning, but for a good, big majority of the movie, you don't know when that cycle is going to occur. You don't know the time interval. You know after it happens, there's going to be a little bit of a cooldown, but you don't know how long that's going to last. But it does follow that formula pretty consistently. And again, the movie starts off really crazy, really well. And it's just this constant anxiety that I felt throughout the whole thing because to kind of give a little bit of the premise, and again, I'm not going to go into too many spoilers here, right? Very, very light spoilers just to explain some story elements here. Basically, in the show, things are smiling. And if something is smiling at you, that's a bad thing, right? It's not a good thing to see a smile here, it's a bad thing. And one thing the film does very well is it messes with your perception of reality. And I absolutely love that. And that's one of the reasons why I had so much anxiety throughout the whole movie. It's because, number one, I didn't know what was real and what was not. Number two, I didn't know when it was happening. Now, this kind of also goes into some of the weaknesses, right? I think they don't use it overly much, which is a good thing, right? They don't use the scares like a lot. There are some jump scares here and there, but it's a lot of just mounting dread of like, okay, where is it going to happen? Once it happens, what's going on, right? It's not so much of a shock factor movie of like a pure jump scare movie. It's really a movie that it's almost like a stalker movie in a sense, but not really. Now, the main thing that I would say upset me with this film is kind of the ending, but I'll get into that soon. But essentially, the whole plot of the film is this lady is a therapist, right? I forgot her name, her last name, but her first name is Rose. So you have Rose the therapist, right? And she basically sees someone off themselves and they're smiling. And now she's seeing people who are smiling and who are kind of tormenting her. And, I'm keeping it very bare bones, obviously, for spoiler's sake, but this is where, again, throughout the whole movie, once you see that smile, you're like, oh shit, and you know it's coming. And again, it's just a really good movie that made me feel on edge for a good majority of the movie. Now, is it anything novel? No, it's really not anything novel, but it does what it does extremely well. However, one of the big issues I did have with the story is at a certain point, it really gets nonsensical, especially with the characters, right? With the characters' interactions and what ends up happening, they go a little bit too tropey into the movie, or into the horror genre in general, where one of the big major overused tropes is, oh, we think this person's crazy, we're not going to believe her. And there's a lot of times where I think this goes on both sides of the coin, right? On Rose's side, she could do a lot more to sort of convince people. Now, granted, she is under a lot of stress with what she's dealing with, and there's some other stuff that plague her as well, even, without the main conflict of the film that's going on in the current day. There's a lot of stuff she has baggage-wise as well that could explain things. But it's like this thing where Rose can obviously do things that can help the situation, and the other people can obviously do things that can help the situation, but the character interactions sometimes seem a little nonsensical for the sake of the plot. And I'll give another example. At a certain point, if you see certain characters doing things, right? If you see certain characters killing cats, mutilating animals, having weapons, and not acting in their right mind, and it's consistent, like everyone's experienced the same thing, but no one does anything, it's just very nonsensical. It's like, if you know there's a person in your house that's dangerous, you're just gonna still like sleep in the same bed and not keep one eye open when you're sleeping? Like, are you kidding me? So on both sides, both the main character Rose's side and everyone else's side as well, there's certain points where they just seem dumb, where it's like no one's actually doing anything to help resolve the situation in a serious way. It's kind of like just, oh, we're just gonna leave things as is. We're not really gonna do anything. We're just gonna keep reacting to how the story unfolds. And it's like, okay, they kind of seem dumb, and it kind of seems too coincidental at certain points. Now, aside from that, and aside from the ending, because I'll be straight up honest, the ending was something I saw from a mile away. And this is where, if you haven't seen horror movies before, because, I'm at the ripe age of 26 now, I've kind of been, like I said, around the block, and a lot of these movies are decently tropey, where they follow the same general pattern and plot if you've seen it before. That's not to say every horror movie is the same, but there's a lot of shared aspects to it where I was able to, with a almost 100% accuracy, able to call out the ending decently early. And I was like, okay, I was completely right. And there's a lot of moments in the film where, I'm guessing, okay, is this person a threat? Is this going to happen? And for the majority of the cases, I felt like, especially towards the end, which is the most important part, I was very right. And it's kind of sad to see that, because it's frustrating. I think the ending frustrated me. I don't think it was a good ending. Now, granted, I think it's a good ending now that I know there's a smile too, but it's really just like the ending really couldn't catch me. And the ending is good, right? If it can catch you, it's very, very good. I don't think it could catch actual horror movie enjoyers that have seen the tropes before. But aside from that, right, aside from the ending being a little lackluster because it's very not surprising, especially if you've seen horror, I think the film does just a great job of causing anxiety, because you don't know what's real and what's not, and you don't know who's going to come next and when. It's like you're constantly looking not necessarily over your shoulder, but over the main character's shoulder to be like, okay, what is happening? And they don't really give too much. And again, maybe they'll go through this route in Smile too, but this is where they don't go too much into the actual gritty details of what's happening, what sort of is this smiling, why is it occurring, what's happening with it. They go into it a little bit, but they keep it very like cut and dry, and at a certain point they don't go further into it, which is weird because the movie is a decently long movie. I think it's almost 2 hours, so I was surprised by that. But it just gets too tropey at times. It really gets too tropey with like the main character having all the evidence, be like, oh, I've connected the dots, here's why this is happening, here's what's happening to me, here's what proves I'm not crazy. But instead the character calls them crazy before she can even show it, and she's like, you know what, I can't even deal with you anymore. Like, I'm not even going to show you everything that shows I'm not crazy. And it's like, I feel like people are hit with an ugly stick in this movie sometimes, where a lot of the times, again, and this is both sides, right? The one side could easily do something to rectify the situation if the second side also did something that is very just easy and either just read or listen. But there's only seems to be like one person who, with a delayed reaction in this movie, actually has a brain with what's going on, and you know, people who will watch it will realize, hopefully, who I'm talking about. But overall, it was a very, very good movie. Not perfect. Again, the ending was like, but it was a very good movie for the pure fact that it gave me anxiety, because it's the anxiety of the unknown, of like, I don't know who's actually real, who's not, and what's going to happen. So because of that, I had to rate it decently high. So my rating after watching this whole film is definitely going to be at least a 7.5 out of 10. It was a really good movie. Like, you know, I'm gonna be honest, the parts for the majority of the movie were good. There was a lot of lapses in logic, but you know, you have to have a certain level of suspended disbelief to go even into these things in general, because you know, in real life, I feel like a lot of this horror shit would not happen because people aren't stupid, even though they are. But I feel like they take it up a notch into this movie where it becomes a little bit too unrealistic, where I have to be like, huh? Like, what's going on? For those of you who don't know my rating system, 5 out of 10 is completely neutral. So anything above 5 is good, and I think this was pretty good. I wish I could rate it higher. It's just the characters, and this isn't the actors' fault. The actors are great. It's just the writing just dictates to where too many things were coincidental, and both sides were just kind of just stupid. So hopefully Smile 2 is better. You know, I haven't heard anything too bad about it, but I haven't heard anything in general. Now, I don't know if we'll get to it by the end of Spooky Month. We'll see. But overall, I would highly recommend this film. You know, if you're into the idea of altered reality, and if you're into the idea of an entity kind of stalking you and you not being able to even accurately perceive it until it's too late, I think this is a really, really fucking good movie. It got me, and I haven't felt like this on edge for this long in a long while. So 7.5 out of 10 smiles, I would say. It was pretty good. If you've seen it, please let me know what you think. If not, I would recommend you go watch it. It does have my seal of approval. And if you enjoyed, you could watch me at Twitch TV/Tecnics channel. So, hope everyone enjoyed. Eee!